I started this bit 10 minutes ago to segue into a fun bit about a doctor putting his finger in my asshole. We still have time to do that bit, but it will be rushed now. I want to point out the single mom who was so on my side when I said only her and her kind should be president. When I said that thing about someone putting his fingers in my asshole, she turned to her friends as if to say, we should have gone to a different show.
I'm here for you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Have you had fingers in your ass and then you do this motion?
Don't kiss, don't tell.
Don't kiss, don't tell. Your doctor kissed you. Is that covered by copay? Copay covered by copay. Come on, John! Alright, so I was on an airplane 9 times in 8 days. I got home and I shit a lot of blood. Like a lot of blood. Like it was like I just watched the movie Carrie and my asshole was like, I want to be like her. So I went to the hospital at the end of it was like 2 blocks away, it's the end of an alley. So I just walked to the hospital, and it was 2011, and I didn't know that this UFC was really popping off at the time, and they had just had a UFC event in Toronto, and all of the fighters, I didn't know this. If you ever watch a UFC, when the fight is done, they're not better. They have to go to a hospital, and I was so shocked to see winners of fights in the hospital. I'd be like, you won, and he still hurt you? That's gotta be disappointing. But in front of the hospital, the emergency room was so full, was a nurse not letting people in that could wait until morning. And at this point, I worked myself into such a fervor, I thought I had some sort of like ass cancer that was like visible to the naked eye. And also I was having a heart attack. I had cancer so powerful, it had given me a heart attack in the 11 minutes since I had discovered this cancer. And I explained this all to the nurse, who had this look on her face best described as, no you don't. I prefer nurses to doctors. I find that nurses look like they've saved a life. You meet a doctor, he's in a crisp white coat, not a hair out of place, just it's benign. Like you meet a nurse, she's covered in mud and blood, there's a severed hand in one pocket. Who's that? I don't even know who that is. You're fine! So I was just like, and she was like, what are your symptoms? And I was like, I didn't want to say to the nurse, so I went COCA, and that was blood. And she rolled her eyes and went, you can say shit. And then she got real close and went, I watched a man die today. And she said it in a way that made me think it wasn't at work. And then she said, well, there's only one way to test if you're having heart attack cancer. And I was like, what is it? And she went, drop and give me 10 push-ups, which I dutifully did. I dropped and gave her 10 push-ups. I stood back up, satisfied I was going to be led into the hospital, and then she went, yeah, you can't come in. No one who's having a heart attack or has severe cancer can do 10 push-ups. Go away. I went back home, I waited about 10-15 minutes, and then I had to go caca again. and he brought his old cow blood, and this time I had just purchased an iPhone. I know, a little late adopter, 2011, but you know, I didn't want the government to have my data. Anyway, so I went and got my brand new iPhone. The second photo I had ever taken with an iPhone was of a bloody toilet. And then I made a video. First ever video on an iPhone is me with my face and the clothes I was wearing in front of the toilet. And I did that because I was pretty sure if I went back to the nurse and said it happened again, showed her a photo, she would say, how do I know that happened tonight? But with the video, it's very clear. I walked back to the hospital. Now brimming with satisfaction, I will get the medical attention I need for this very debilitating, fatal illness. And I walked up to the nurse and I said, it happened again. And she went, well, how do I know that's true? And then I showed her a photo. And then she said, how do I know that photo is from today? And I was, oh, well, this moment has been very cool. And I showed her the video. And she went, okay, come on. And then we're walking through the emergency room and she said, you're going straight in the back. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been to an emergency room, but it's not like a nightclub. You don't want to immediately go in. When you go to an emergency room, you actually want to wait around the waiting room for a bit. That's them saying to you, look, you're not gonna die, but it's gonna need some stitches. If you're going immediately back there from the emergency room, they're saying, hey, you're gonna die. And we don't want it to be in front of these people. So I go in the back, and the same nurse that goes, it's a teaching hospital, do you mind if there's any... Is someone stealing a Lime scooter in front of my show? Oh, that's so embarrassing. Someone tried to break into a Volkswagen Passat and then just left it. I've been heckled before. I've never been heckled by all the vehicles on the road going, let me show you what I can do. Am I the only one that whenever they hear a motorcycle doing that, they don't think, ooh, cool engine, you just think, your vehicle's farting. Just me? Okay, well, if you didn't like that joke, you're gonna really hate the joke coming up where a man puts his finger in my ass. So, she goes, teaching hospital, do you mind if there's students here? And I go, I don't mind. She didn't explain what the exam is. Spoiler alert. A doctor then comes in with 26 medical students. He then says, we'll need to conduct the exam. And then I thought, I took my shirt off. And I was like, conduct away. And then they went, no, not done. And I was like, what? Want me to take off my shoes? In a hospital? And then I eventually had to disrobe, and he shoves his fingers in my asshole, and he was rummaging around in there. It was so much like a medical exam, as much as he was like, I just need to get to this thing that's at the end of this chamber, and I almost got it. And he was running around, and he looked at my face, and he did this sort of like, hey, are you a comedian? I then said, yes, I am. And then he said, ooh, I saw you 2 weeks ago. Not for me. Do you know how weird it is to disappoint someone who's fingering your asshole, and that's not the reason? And then the nurse came back in, and then she went, he's a comedian, asked him if he's been traveling, that probably caused severe dehydration, and so his colon lining is separating from the colon, causing the bleeding. And then he looked at me and went, is that right? And then I went, I don't know. And then I went to a pharmacy and I got cream, and it turned out that nurse was correct. I don't know why a doctor had to recognize me while fingering to prove her correct. But you never know with nurses.